first. And if anything is impacted for any reason, we don't think it will be, but just so that's kind of all together in our minds when we're thinking about it. I think those are going to be the two changes. So if I say something wrong, you'll know why, because I'm reading from like, I'm reading from like notes. So I need to say, not action. Okay. Any questions on that from anybody?
And I have a question right fast before we go live, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Going back to, because I was going to ask this question, it might be best to ask it now before we go live. On 001, going back to where it talks about there shall be 3 levels of preparation under number 2 on page, I don't know what page that is, but talking about the administrator supervisor role. It says master's degree, advanced specialist degree, doctorate degree. So those individuals that may be in those roles now, does this apply to them, or it only applies to new individuals that are coming into those capacities?
That's a question we need to ask Andrew, because we need to make sure that, because Andrew's going to present that part. Andrew, are you on here yet?
I can ask that during the meeting.
Yeah, I'm fine. And I'm fine with anyone asking anything, of course. But yeah, let's make sure, because we're gonna get a bit of we're gonna get a lot of questions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From the field. Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Allison.
So Madison is trying to get in right now and her server is blocking her. So
yes,
just to
really.
let you know, if you need me to call the roll, and I am prepared to do that,
Okay.
but I need to start the live stream. Would you like me to do that?
Yes, that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you all. And thank you all for being here today.
Yeah. We are live.
Good afternoon. This is the meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, our September meeting. Dr. Evans, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Dr. Blanton. Dr. Bullock.
Here.
Ms. Wisner. Dr. Fleming.
Present.
Ms. Edwards. She's not here yet. Ms. Patton.
I'm here.
Thank you. Dr. Locklear.
I'm here. Thank you.
Dr. Elliott. Dr. Penfield. Superintendent Truitt. Miss Smith. I see her name right there.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
Ms. Hoskins.
Here.
Dr. Weddington.
Here.
Dr. Griffin.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Dr. Graham.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins
Here.
and Dr. Winter.
Present.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome commission members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, and online listeners to the September 12th, 2024 monthly meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. This Standards Commission develops and recommends to the State Board of Education rules related to all aspects of educator preparation, licensure, continuing education, and professional standards of North Carolina educators. I am Ann Bullock, Chair of the Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, and I call this meeting to order. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website, www.northcarolinapublicschools.org, on the SBE meetings link. This meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the e-board agenda. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Commission members are required that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this commission. Does any member of the commission know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring this matter to the attention of myself, the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Our next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Commission members, you have had an opportunity to review the proposed agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda for the September 12, 2024 meeting?
So moved, Connie.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear.
Second, Kim Winter.
Thank you, Kim Winter. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda for today's meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes. The minutes from our from our previous commission meetings on June 13th, 2024 have been prepared and made available to you. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved. Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Second, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from June 13th, 2024, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The link for the June State Board of Education meeting has been sent to you prior to this meeting. The recording is bookmarked at the presentations for the Educator Standards and Practices ES&P Committee, which is the committee that handles the work of Pepsi. If anyone has questions, please let Dr. Evans know, and we will follow up during the October Pepsi meeting. Before we begin any other business, I would like to officially welcome Ms. Heather Smith, who has joined the commission as the 2024 North Carolina Teacher of the Year. Heather, would you just tell us just briefly where you taught, just a few things about yourself?
Yes, thank you guys. I want to make sure I'm in my newly almost renovated basement, so you can kind of see that this is my space. And this is very strange for me because I am used to being at a school. So I'll be honest with you, I cried the first week. But it was all rejuvenated when I've been doing some school visits. And yes, I got to see Dr. Winter yesterday. I am an alumni of Western Carolina University. I played softball there and I started my career in elementary education. I'm 6 foot tall, so I often was told that my age was equated to my height. So out of the fear of feeling that I was the oldest person in the building, I decided to move to middle school because they know that I'm not the oldest one. No, just kidding. But I found a love for middle school math. I had actually, because of softball, extended my license to middle grades math. So I've been teaching 8th grade math at Waynesville Middle School. I have taught, this would have been the start of my 10th year, but I'm in my year sabbatical, but all in Haywood County schools. My husband is a 6th grade math teacher at Waynesville Middle School with me. We have a 7-year-old stepson and a 4-year-old daughter, Blakely, who have been living and loving every bit of this adventure with me. I just want to say that I'm just so thankful to be placed in these opportunities to serve for our students and for our teachers, and the work that you guys put in is just so powerful. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of them and work with you. So I think that was the gist of my life.
That is wonderful, Heather. You will be a great addition. And we look forward to hearing your views. And if you have any questions for any of the commission members, you of course can reach out. And we know that Dr. Winter is particularly proud of you as a CU graduate, and all the faculty and staff at WCU are particularly proud of who you are and that you're a Catamount.
Yes, and I am very proud to be a Catamount. I look forward to actually Monday visiting the Catamount School and being able to speak at the Chancellor's List event as the keynote speaker. So they gave me so much. So if I can contribute anything back to Western that they have given me, I feel like that's an accomplishment. So thank you.
That is wonderful. All right. We'd also like to thank some former members who've recently left Pepsi. One is Ms. Kim Jones, who Heather knows, who is the 2023 North Carolina Teacher of the Year. So we appreciated Kim and her input and comments in our Pepsi meetings. And Dr. Scott Elliott, who is the former superintendent of Watauga County Schools, and they both have left Pepsi for the year, and we have Heather to replace Kim, of course. All right, so now we will have Dr. Evans will present the annual Pepsi report for discussion and action. Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. So the Pepsi report is on an annual basis, and the review period is always from September 1st of the previous year and then until August 31st of the current year. So it's 2023 to 2024. And I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the report, as it's pretty easy to go through, and I'm sure you've already had that opportunity. So it starts out with an introduction talking about how Pepsi was started, and then rolls into the membership and the structure. And you can see where each of you land as far as your role representation and then your terms. Some of the terms need to be updated as far as some people have recently been renewed. And so I have reached out to them, but these are current as of this past year. And this is based on Session Law 2017-189, which brought Pepsi together. And you can see that, as we know, it's a mix of K-12 representation and educator preparation program representation, and then also includes the North Carolina Teacher of the Year, which we now have Ms. Smith, and then the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction State Superintendent. And then I also mentioned the 3 standing subcommittees, the licensure, educator preparation, and performance and assessment subcommittees, and how they've done different work. And that will help lead into the meetings. And this year there were particular policies that were focused on, and you can see the 4 licensure policies that were part of that work. And then the 16 meetings you can see below that. And you can see the construction of each meeting is the date, the type of meeting in parentheses, and then underneath that, the link to that particular meeting, and then those agenda items that either sometimes they needed approval, sometimes they were discussion items, and then sometimes they were informational items. So you can see all the hard work that we did this year throughout. And so you can see the mix between monthly meetings and subcommittee meetings. And that's all of the report. Are there any questions?
I just want to say, good job, Kim. This is very much like an executive summary, but it provides a lot of information. And I'd like to once again thank all the commission members, with a special shout out to my vice chair, Bill, because this is a lot of work. And those of you that chaired the subcommittees that worked all spring, there was a lot of work there. So thank you for that. So I'm very thankful. Anybody have any questions or clarifying information they would like before we vote on approving this? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the Pepsi report for 2023-2024 to be sent to the State Board of Education in October?
So moved, Aaron Fleming.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming.
Kim Winter.
Thank you, Kim Winter. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the report, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the report is approved. Thank you, Dr. Evans. So in addition, Dr. Evans will present the policy amendments to TCED 011 that focus on the content and pedagogy requirement for traditional and residential programs.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Dr. Bullock.
Mhm.
So this particular policy amendment came from subcommittee work that has been previously approved by Pepsi or recommended to the state board by Pepsi and then approved by the state board in July of 2024. So you can see here how it's been placed in the policy. So to include the traditional and residency programs, we put all in front of each of the sections in front of EPP to indicate that it includes all types of programs for these content areas. And you can see those in red, so those are added. And I'll go all the way down so you can see all of it. And then the other red pieces, so you can see that as well as academically or intellectually gifted children, there was an and there, and it should be an or because that's how it is referred to in EC, and we want to make sure that is correct as far as what is referenced for the field. And then you can see A1 here. This is what was added in statute, in most recent statute about the science of reading. And in addition, the science of reading was also added to 3A as well. So those are the red pieces. As far as the blue text is what the state board had added to the original statute from 2017-189, and that's what was focused on during the subcommittee work. And so we wanted to make sure that Pepsi members were aware of what was already added. So this did go through Pepsi, was recommended to the state board by Pepsi and approved by the state board. And we wanted you to know what was added to this particular policy as far as the content pieces beyond the original statute. And this was for specificity and clarification for the field around content. But the blue pieces would not be there for the state board because it's already been approved. This is just for Pepsi reference. Are there any questions about any of this text or any of these amendments? Oh, I do want to add that the statutory reference would also be updated for this particular policy, because legal has let me know that it needs to be updated.
Kim, can you go to the second page?
Sure.
Anyone have any questions on this one? Kim, would you be able to talk about if this is approved, then what happens next and then how it goes forth, that type of thing?
So it would go to the state board in in October. And then from there, the state board would consider these policy amendments and then potentially approve them in November. And also, this text would also need to go through, these changes would also need to go through rules, depending on what is already in rules around content and pedagogy for EPPs. So it would need to go through rules.
Just so everyone's clear.
Sure,
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Just so yeah.
absolutely.
All right. All right.
Dr. Bullock, this is Ryan Collins, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
I believe this was some late breaking discussion, but I know legal had some concerns about some of the other policy amendments that are going to be discussed today. So my last understanding is that this would be a discussion item for Pepsi today, with actual vote next month. So we had been discussing that with Dr. Tomberlin. I just wanted to make sure that there was clarity on that before Pepsi moved forward today.
For 11?
I'm sorry, for all of the policies as a group,
So,
because I know there's several policies that are up today.
so we had discussed prior to the meeting, Ryan, with Dr. Bullock, that it would be LICN 001. That would be under discussion.
Okay,
Right, you put. you
But
could-
I do know that there needs to be statutory updates for all the other policies, I believe.
Right. I will say that I think that's fine with respect to this policy because there weren't any substantive concerns that we had identified. I just wasn't sure, I wasn't clear if any of them all of them would be on for discussion day or if it was just other specific ones. So thank you for that
Sorry
clarification.
for the lack of clarity there, Ronnie.
Okay. Dr. Locklear, did you have something you wanted to ask or say?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Dr. Bullock. Quick question on the second page at 4C for science teachers, adequate preparation issues related to science laboratory safety. Is this aligning with the new science standards?
This aligns with what is in statute.
Okay.
So that red language is statute. I'm sorry, I left that off.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I think that's it. That's what she's gonna say. Go ahead, Dr. Locklear.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if it had any reference to the new science standard, but you just said it's aligned with what's already in statute. So this has no
Right.
relevance on the new science standards.
I'm not totally clear on that. I would have to talk to curriculum and instruction about that.
I mean, I would think that this is general enough that the standards, that the new science standards should be
Right.
where they,
I think
Yes.
that's what it was intended by the
Yeah.
statute.
so for example, if there are new laboratory safety things that need to be gone over in the new standards, then that would be the way it would go, right? Like that. Okay. Makes sense. Okay, so we, just as a point of clarity, we're gonna vote on this. I want to make sure, Ryan, that you think that that's an appropriate thing for us to do, or if there are questions, we can table it.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fine on this one. I'm getting clarification, but yeah, I don't think legal had any substantive concerns with this particular policy.
Okay, and I know Allison's on here as well, so. All right, very good. So do I have a motion to approve the policy amendments to TCED 011 to be sent to the State Board of Education in October?
So moved, Dan.
Thank you, Bill. Have a second?
Second, Kim Winter.
Thank you, Kim. Any further discussion? Is Madison here? I'm sorry, I can't see. Is she?
Madison is not here. She had trouble getting on and she couldn't get on. She was being blocked.
Okay, Kim, do you mind calling the roll for a vote on this?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Bullock,
Yes. Approve, whatever I'm saying, yes.
Dr. Fleming, I'll come back to him. Miss Patton,
Approve.
Dr. Locklear,
Yes, approved.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes, approve.
Mrs. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approve.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Mr. Smith, I think Mr. Smith may have disappeared. Dr. Graham,
Approve.
Ms. Jenkins,
Approve.
Dr. Winter.
Approve.
And then Dr. Fleming,
Approved.
thank you.
Did,
We,
did our new member also vote?
Yes,
Okay, very
it
good.
was all yeses,
Okay,
or
great.
yays,
So the motion passes.
yes.
Thank you all. Now Dr. Cyberg will present policy amendments to TCED 009, which is about GPA calculations for discussion and action.
Good afternoon, commission members. I hope you can hear me.
We
You
can.
can.
Very good. And Kim, are we on the next one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was doing two jobs at once. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, so what we're bringing for you today is some outcomes of the subcommittee work that ultimately went to the board. And now it's circling back to you all to get the technical language put together so we can update the policy itself. And in the law, it states that this commission shall consider which GPA average, either the grade point average in the content courses relevant to the license area, or the cumulative grade point average would be most appropriate for clinical residency students. So this has to do with the actual technical GPA calculation. And so the new language you see there, as Kim mentioned earlier, is in red. And this is coming out of the subcommittee and ultimately was looked at and approved to proceed from the board. So this is the technical language capturing that. And basically what it's saying is, and then again, this is for clinical residency students. The EPP is going to be is going to determine the GPA based on at least 18 semester hours of content coursework. That the EPPs will then determine the allowable content coursework. So they have jurisdictional control over which courses that they want to include in that calculation. And then they also have the opportunity to consider content coursework from different transcripts. So if Andrew has, maybe did some work in multiple institutions, that it's under the EPP's they can consider any transcripts that candidate is bringing to the table to calculate that GPA requirement. And then lastly, if a student requires remediation to their GPA, that the EPP shall take content-related coursework external to the EPP pedagogical requirements. So what that's saying is those courses that you're going to be working on in your residency program that lead ultimately towards your license, they can't be considered towards the content. That any of those remediation credits that you would need to gather to ultimately achieve the minimum GPA requirement, they have to be outside of those EPP pedagogical requirements for licensure.
Are there any questions about what's in here? And I want my subcommittee members, particularly that worked on this, to make sure this reads as we discussed. Andrew, are you trying to talk or are you just talking to Tom?
I was just whispering something to Tom there. We were
Okay.
looking at the
Okay.
language.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
I wasn't on the subcommittee, but I just wanted to recognize that I did get some communication today from multiple people, just that there was confusion because it felt like it was reading for all initial licensure and not just for clinical residency as the subcommittee worked on and we talked about in the spring. So I guess it's just a point of clarity and making sure that we continue to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
So
Dr. Winter, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the title was adjusted from the original materials to make sure that we know this is just for residency. Right, Dr. Cyberg?
Yes, I was just going to say essentially the same thing. I was looking at an older version earlier today, and we didn't have that clarity in there. And so what you see there in section B, the subheading there, GPA calculation requirements for admittance of clinical residents, should give more clarity that the field, I think, was concerned about out of the gate.
I agree, and I really appreciate that.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you, Dr. Winter. And Dr. Seiberg, again, could you please discuss what will happen if this is approved?
So if Pepsi approves this, then ultimately it would go to the board for consideration, and the board would have to formally move that into policy. And the point at which it becomes policy is the point at which it would become active. And so I think what we have said to the field already is, hey, be aware that this is the direction that we're headed. And we're probably 3 or 4 months away from getting to that point at which it becomes actionable from a policy, a perspective that it's actually in policy technically. But the point at which it becomes policy is the point at which we would have to uphold things. So and then I heard some subsequent follow-up from the field. Hey, we have this candidate, that's considering coming in this fall. Do we have to use the current the current flexibility that we have right now, or do we have to move all in on this? And the answer is, because it wasn't in policy yet, and until it is in policy, the current process that has been in place for a couple of years remains. It's the point at which it actually becomes policy is the point at which this is the way it needs to go from that point forward. Does that answer your question, Dr. Bullock?
Just have to go to rules.
On the rules side of things, I have to think about that.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, it would.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, it would have to go to rules, and that would take some considerable time to get that in place.
Yes.
Mhm.
So just like the prior policy changes, this one also would go to rules, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. That's helpful. Okay. Any other
Dr.
questions on Z? Dr. Tomberlin?
Yeah, I just have, as the eventual implementer of this policy, I have a question. So we did make this distinction that it is for residency licensed teachers. Is the assumption then that GPA calculation for a traditional admittee would be the transcript as it exists in the first 2 years of the undergraduate experience? Are you taking the full transcript of those folks, and there's no flexibility for a traditional program to look at just the content area related to the licensure area?
If the State Board of Education would like the Pepsi Commission to look at that, we would be happy to review that information and send it to one of our subcommittees.
Thank you. That's helpful.
What Ann thinks personally and what can happen are two different things. It may sometimes be the same answer, but sometimes other people might have other ideas. Any other points of clarification for anyone? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the policy amendments to TCED 009 to be sent to the State Board of Education in October?
So moved, Alexandra.
Thank you, Alexandra. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dr. Evans, I'm assuming you're still calling the roll, so could you please call the roll for the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming, Ms. Patton.
Approve.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming. Ms. Patton,
Approve.
Dr. Locklear,
Approved.
Mrs. Smith,
Approve.
Ms. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approve.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Mr. Smith, Dr. Graham,
Approve.
Ms. Jenkins,
Approve.
and Dr. Winter.
Approve.
Thank you.
Okay,
Unanimous yeses.
the motion passes. Thank you all
Yes, it
very
does.
much. Dr. Cyberg will also present policy amendments to TCED 004 EPP recognition and approval process for discussion and action.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. So TCED 004 is about educator preparation program recognition and approval. So this one has to do with the process of an ed prep program that is seeking an initial authorization to operate in North Carolina. And in law, there are two ways that you can become initially authorized. The first way is through a formal approval process that was set up by the State Board of Education. And the second way is if the applicant that is putting in the proposal is already nationally accredited by the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE, that signifies sort of a fast track for them to be allowed in as an authorized EPP. Now, at the time this law was written, I think it was back in 2017, 2018, CAPE was the only educator preparation program accrediting body recognized by this council, or by the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, or CHIA. I'm pulling my alphabet soup out here. So CHIA then is the primary national voice for accreditation and quality assurance to Congress and the U.S. Department of Education. So this CHIA organization recognized CAPE as the only accrediting body at the time. Now, since then, there's a new player that has CHIA recognition, and that's the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, or what the field commonly refers to as AQEP. And because those folks also have the CHIA recognition, this language has now been proposed, and the adjusted language is to allow educator preparation programs seeking North Carolina initial authorization that may have AQEP accreditation to be afforded the same track as CAPE accredited programs, given that both of those accrediting bodies are recognized by this CHIA organization. Hopefully that makes some sense. I know there's a lot of names in there that I put in. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have several questions.
Okay.
So my first question is, I thought it says, so somebody can be CAPE accredited and not approved by the State Board of Education to give a license in North Carolina? That's how this is reading.
No, I think, I'm sorry, this is Tom Tomlin. I think what this is saying is for initial authorization, there are two routes. That if the EPP is applying and they have the CAPE accreditation, then the board by law must approve them as an EPP in Carolina. If not, then there is a process that we go through to grant that, to make a recommendation, a peer review process, to then make a recommendation to the board for initial authorization. What the board in a prior meeting had recognized is that with the approval of AQEP by CHIA, can we not allow them, those EPPs with that accreditation, the same kind of equal footing? Now, I do have to say, I'm going to preempt Mr. Collins here and say that there's some question around whether this probably just needs to be discussion with this group, because there's some legal questions here if we can do this that have to be kind of sorted out. From our thinking, we were thinking that the board could go ahead and say, we'll initially authorize kind of pro forma anyone that's got AQEP. We're not trying to construe it as they have the same statutory right that's afforded CAPE. We're just saying the board has acknowledged that they would be okay with just granting their approval to anybody who has AQUEP or we didn't want to put AQUEP in here in case a third accrediting body gets recognized by CHIA. We just wanted to make it general that if they're approved by CHIA, then they should have that same national recognition. But again, I think this is a matter for discussion with the group and how the group feels about this, because I don't think we're prepared to take this for a vote today because of the legal issues related to that.
So
Would you? I just
yeah.
want to make sure Mr. Collins agrees.
Ryan,
This was one of two policies that we had some concerns with. And so I think just having a little extra time to review the question that Dr. Tomlin articulated would be beneficial,
great.
as well as any other concerns that the commission raises today.
Yeah, so let me clarify that we're just discussing this item today. We will not take it forth if it were to pass because it needs to be reviewed by council. I have a question. For C, is SACS COC approved by CHIA?
Not as a national accrediting body. They are a regional accrediting body.
Okay. I'm using that as an example, right? Is this presenting any type of loophole for it not to be ed prep accreditation? Because that's the intent, right? The intent is for it to be an ed prep accreditation.
That is correct. And we're hoping we're closing down loopholes with the national accreditation from an accreditor recognized by CHIA. So hopefully that right now that is an N of 2 as far as we know.
This is Kim Winter. I don't have a question, but just wanted to reinforce what Dr. Tomlin and others said, that while I also do not want there to be loopholes in this, I do believe that it is smart not to name the organization. I think that will be helpful for us as we've seen issues with that in other ways. So,
Such as B.
Yeah.
Other comments that might be helpful for legal review, or those, in general, for the staff.
And I do want to point out SACS is recognized by CHIA. So just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you, Dr. Graham.
But Dr. Graham, as a regional accrediting body or as a national accrediting?
As a regional, not national.
Okay.
You're correct.
Right. So the way I would interpret this is you could not use SACS or any of the other regional accrediting bodies to fulfill this requirement. That would still trigger a peer review from our perspective.
That's correct.
I don't hear any other comments. If anyone has any final comments, please speak up now.
Let me preface my comment by saying I am a board member on CAPE and an officer with CAPE. So there's a natural conflict here. Still not certain about AQUEP. I understand the intent here, and AQUEP is fairly new. So I would just ask us to make certain that we're truly comfortable with this, with AQUEP being fairly new, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. All right.
Dr. Graham, I would just remind you that if you're going to vote on this, that you would recuse yourself from voting or participating in discussion.
That is correct.
And just make sure the record reflects that.
Dr. Bullock.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is just for discussion right now. So we're going to have additional time to come back and review this. Is this correct?
Yes, and I
That's
believe Mr. Collins may be working with Dr. Tomberlin, et cetera, to around the language. So it could look different the next time we see it as well. Is that correct, Dr. Tomberlin?
Yes, it could, but the general sentiment would be
The same.
the concept would be the same. And I just want to be clear that this came from a direct conversation with the State Board of Education. This was not, we are not in any way promoting AQUEP. Neither I nor Dr. Seibert has any affiliation with that organization. So we did not, this was a response to some board inquiry, not our own recommendation.
Dr. Lockley, is there something you wanted to say today, or do you want to hold your comments? Do you have more thought time, or just making sure you have the platform if you need it?
No, I can just hold my comments. I'm just trying to do a little research on my own. Thank you.
All right, very good then. Okay, so and you can also reach out, send an email between meetings if you need to, if you have more comments. So it's all helpful as we get things ready for meetings. All right, thank you, Dr. Seibert.
You're welcome.
All right, so next, Dr. Tom Tomberlin will present policy amendments to license 001, principal licensure and residency license field experience and PD requirements. Remember, this one also is only for discussion. This will come back in October. So this is a first look at this revision of 001, which probably has been revised at least 30 times in the world. So let's see what we've got today. Dr. Tomberlin.
Yes. So one of the issues that requires this revision is the ending of what we call the waiver, and that is the waiver of requirements to hold a principal license, and until very recently, anybody who has completed a course towards an MSA or a principal licensure program by August 31st, 2024 was covered under this waiver. That means they didn't have to take a test in order as a condition of holding the license. So given that the waiver technically is over as of a couple weeks ago, we felt like it would be important to put the requirements for an administrator's license into policy. Those requirements are not there right now because we've got some work to do with this, but that's the intent, is to update this with the new requirements that those folks who do not complete that course, haven't completed a course by August 31st, 2024 will be held to. And just to run it through it really quickly, they have to hold at a minimum a bachelor's degree. They have to have completed an internship of a minimum of 500 hours. They have to pass a state board approved assessment, and they have to have 4 years of experience as a licensed educator. And so in order to hold the principal license, you would have to meet all those criteria. Now, on the issue of the 4 years of experience as a licensed educator, in conversations it has around this policy, it's clear in the law the intent is that you hold that 4 years either in a teaching area or an instructional support area. And so we make it very clear that you can't have 2 years as a teacher and then get provisionally licensed as an administrator and spend 2 years as an assistant principal, and that qualifies you for the license. The intent of the policy is that the candidate have 4 years of experience as a licensed educator, either in a teaching area or an instructional support area, or a combination of those two, but not as you couldn't use administrative work to satisfy that requirement. I think that's the biggest point of discussion, Dr. Bullock, that Pepsi needs to kind of contend with, if that's the intent the direction that we want to go with that stipulation around the experience.
Yes, thank you.
And I would like to, do we want to pause there because the other section is kind of like totally unrelated?
Yeah, let's pause and just to see, because I want everybody to make sure they also heard what Dr. Tomberlin said as around the 4-year piece, and how that might look in a public school unit, and how just all that. So any clarifying or other kind of questions for Dr. Tomberlin around this piece?
Hi, this is Connie. Dr. Tomlin, we were talking there, number 2, the 3 levels of preparation: master's degree, advanced specialist degree, and doctorate degree. Does this apply to only those individuals after September 1 of 2024?
No, that piece of the policy, it's red and underlined because I moved it from where it was originally in the policy, just for some clarity purposes, but that is existing policy. The administrator license is only offered at one of those three levels. You can't do this at the bachelor's level. You cannot hold an administrator's license at the bachelor's level.
Right. But I'm going back up here. So any of these individuals, I'm just asking for clarity because it's already been asked of me. So if there's a person that's in one of these positions, I'm going to say a curriculum instructional specialist that does not hold one of these degrees, then they're not in compliance with the law, is what we're saying. Is that correct?
So that's a great question, Dr. Locklear, and I want to point back to these are 3 levels of preparation. So it is not 3 levels of degrees that, like, in no way do we say that any master's degree in the educational setting can satisfy the requirement to hold a principal license. If you already hold a master's degree, you can do a licensure only program and qualify for a master's level principal's license. But you can't just use a doctorate degree. My doctorate would not qualify me for a principal's license. I have to do I can use it as the basis for doing a program, but I can't use that degree to earn the license. Does that make sense?
Dr. Locklear, are you asking that if they held the position of instructional specialist, would that count as someone in education for 4 years?
Yes, I understand that about the principal.
Oh, I got
position.
you.
I'm making reference to an individual that may be serving as a curriculum instructional specialist. How does that apply to that individual?
Yes.
So those licenses are under the administrative umbrella of licenses. So not knowing the specifics, I would be inclined to say no, because that's a administrative or supervisory role. It is not a teaching or instructional support role. Now, and I'm distinguishing that from someone who's a curriculum facilitator in a school. My assumption is you're talking about a district level, someone that's over curriculum instruction for a district. Is that
Yes.
right? I mean, again, I would say that falls under what we consider administrative and not teaching or instructional support. And that's the question for Pepsi at hand is, does anybody who holds an administrative license need to have a fundamental level of experience as a practitioner, either in teaching or instructional support, in order to hold those positions? And that is the question before Pepsi about the direction of how we construe that. Like, can you use actual administrative time experience as the basis for an administrator's license?
Other thoughts? Any thoughts on that anyone would like to say about that question?
This is Kim. So I mean, I personally have strong opinions that what Dr. Tomlin said, the answer is yes, you do need that foundation. That's how I would vote. But I do see a lot of people asking for clarification if, say, someone taught 3 years and then got tapped to become an instructional coach in a school, arguing that that is still instructional support. So I can see where it could get blurry. So I guess it's just how you define that, right? But that wouldn't necessarily require a license per se to do that at the school level, right?
Well, I think in general, schools, curriculum facilitators at the school level are either holding a teaching license and being paid as a teacher, or they could be being paid in an instructional support role. I think what this comes down to is there are certain payroll object codes that the state would utilize to determine whether they met that eligibility. So, and to clarify, if there are object codes in the 100 teens, I'm not trying to bore you with NCDPI finance, but if you're paying somebody as an assistant principal, even though they hold a teaching license, we would say that person, they're not gaining experience in classroom teaching or in instructional support. If you're paying them as a 130, which is our instructional support group, we would say, yep, they meet that requirement. So that how this is determined, districts would have to be very careful about how they manage the way they pay folks. That would be the only way we would be able to qualify or deny somebody based on these roles.
I'm going back to what Kim said. I just think that there needs to be a little clarity here because it can get blurry for everyone. I mean, you have some districts that call the instructional leaders, they call their individuals instructional leaders, or some call curriculum specialists, some are called academic coaches. And if if you're a teacher that's listed as a curriculum specialist, they may think that they fall within this category here of requirements. And I'm just wondering if we need to have a little more clarity here.
So
if they're at the school side is what I'm saying. They may not be a district-wide curriculum instructional leader, but they may be a school curriculum instructional leader. Does that imply that they have to meet all of these requirements? Years ago, we called them teacher leaders on the campus, and now the names have changed over and over. So I just think it can get a little blurry here for a lot of individuals if we don't have clarity in this component, in this area.
So, Dr. Locklear, I hear you. And I think what I'm trying to articulate is for the districts to understand these requirements, there would need to be guidelines for the districts and or EPPs to understand these that I don't know that's appropriate to put into policy. So I don't know if I want to put into policy, employees paid on object codes, blah, 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 blah. I mean, regardless, the policy makes it clear the intent here that someone has 4 years of experience in as a classroom teacher or as an instructional support provider. And we've got the ability to check that they held that license for at least 4 years. And we have the ability to check if they were paid in roles that satisfied the intent of this policy. I think it's the procedural guidelines that licensure will use to identify this that you're after, and I'm not sure if policies, the policy is the place for all that kind of procedure, if that helps. But we wouldn't leave people blind to what qualifies and what doesn't.
So Dr. Tomberlin, for clarity's sake, so if this policy is approved next month, DPI would issue said guidance to districts and EPPs so they're aware of what they should be doing and should not be doing to avoid any issues that Kim just discussed.
That is correct. Now, the challenge for the EPPs is you don't have ready access to payroll files. And this goes back, in my mind, this would go back to the MOU between LEAs and their partnering EPPs, especially around principal MSA candidates. So that's a requirement that there be some kind of MOU, and the district would have to be in a position to vet that, yes, this person meets the requirements. Because what we don't want is somebody to engage in, let's say, their internship. They take that leave of absence to do a paid internship, and at the end of that internship, it comes out that they don't meet the qualifications to hold the license. That would be a really unfortunate situation. So with all policies, the policy just gives you the high level, what the requirements are and what you have to do. Many of you know that there's a whole lot more process underneath LIC and 001 than what's in this policy. And we work very closely with all of our LEAs and our EPPs to make sure they understand the complexities that are going on underneath this kind of high-level policy language. So, Dr. Graham, yes, that would be part of this. Would be, here's the guidance, here's how you know whether somebody qualifies, is in a position to qualify for a principal license at the end of a program.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other question that I haven't raised, so we have the 4-year. Some questions have come up in our conversation about, does the candidate need to hold a CPL, which you cannot hold a CPL after 3 years, but with limited licenses, there is the ability for someone to hold a license for more than 3 years, but not have a CPL. So that is a question that Pepsi needs to consider and think about. Is it just 4 years as a licensed educator? Are limited license holders eligible to become principals? And what would the recommendation of Pepsi be in that regard to the State Board of Education? And for anybody who doesn't know, a limited license holder is someone who has met all other program requirements to hold a license, but has not completed the testing, either the content testing or the pedagogy testing, and is issued a 3-year license, which is now renewable. So you could have very experienced educators. In the future, you could have very experienced educators who have not passed their licensure exams, but move to seek to become principals. And is that allowable? Should it be a condition of holding the principalship to hold a 5-year renewable license, either in instructional support or in teaching?
Tom, I know there's conversation out there, but I believe that if they're showing effectiveness and they have those foundational skills, I'm within the opinion that if they've been effective in the classroom and have proven that, and their district leaders are attesting to that for that limited license, I would say those 4 years count. And that's my opinion on the scenario. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other comments they'd like to make about this? Because this one's a bit complex, right? And I know, Ryan, your group might also have some comments that you'll discuss in terms of legal, because I know that's one of the reasons we're not taking this forward. Dr. Tomerlin, do you have do you need any more information to understand the concerns?
No, I don't think I do. From what I've heard, Bill Griffin carries the day, and we'll go with 4 years, and we'll leave CPL out of it. And again, folks, I don't have a I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to advocate for any position. I'm just relaying the conversations that we've heard in discussions with folks thinking about this policy. Our job is to bring your recommendation to the State Board of Education.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Folks might also want to get feedback from their groups to make sure that there are other things that come up, because Dr. Locklear, what you said today, I thought was very insightful, and I appreciate that. And that's why we have a wide variety of folks on PEPC, so we can have a lot of people's eyes and ears on policies that will impact us all. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tomberlin.
Yes,
Again,
there's one more.
so you're going to go to the adjunct.
No, there's one more section in LIC
Okay.
in 01. I think this is going to be much happier. So that's my prediction. So we are looking at out-of-state educators with 3 or more years of experience. And in discussions with our legal department, we've recognized that the requirement for the subtest of math and reading for out-of-state educators who are seeking an elementary or ECG license is pointed specifically at folks who are applying for an IPL or a residency license. So as you recall, until very recently, anybody coming from out of state had to produce effectiveness data in order to be granted a CPL in the state. And most people just didn't do that. And so they were granted an IPL. And in that case, that did necessitate them to have a subtest of math and reading. But where educators come to us, but that requirement to produce evaluation data has been eliminated by the General Assembly. Therefore, folks coming from out of state with 3 or more years of experience who qualify for a CPL in our state, we do not interpret the law to require them to have a subtest of math and reading for the licensure exam that they took whenever they became licensed in their home state. So what we're saying here, you can see here, we've stricken the elementary or ECGC clauses here that deal with they must have a passing subtest of math and reading, and that clause. So what we're looking for out-of-state folks is they completed an educator prep program that was approved by the state which issued the license, and they have comparable testing requirements, or that the educator has achieved a passing score on an exam that was approved by the state from which the license was issued. That's what we're going to look for out-of-state teachers who come to us and qualify for a CPL. For folks who don't qualify for a CPL, they would still have to meet they would have to take our exam of subtest of math and reading. But this, at least these experienced educators that are coming to us from other states would not be held to this requirement.
Comments or questions about this?
Well, I thought I would at least get a tiny little cheer, but
I personally love this policy change, but I try to hold off without making my comments first. I think this would be a positive thing to lessen the hoops for out-of-state teachers.
We need quality educators, Tom. Thank you.
Agree.
all right.
All right.
And I think those are the big things we wanted to present to you with LIC and 001, and we'll definitely, and all this is for the provisional license we did include, the statute says that if you hold a provisional license, you have to enroll in an EPP before the first year of the professional license expiring. That wasn't in the policy. We've put that in there. And I hope that makes sense to everybody, that if we grant you a provisional, your job one is to enroll in a program. And then we just make it clear that an individual who holds a provisional has to pass the test in order to convert the provisional license to a clear administrator's license. And so that's just kind of a little update to the provisional license section. And we appreciate all your feedback. And so that helps us guide what the policy will look like when we bring it back to you next month, hopefully for action.
Hopefully. So, all right, thank you very much. Dr. Tomerlin will also present policy amendments to EVAL 023 adjunct instructor requirements. This says for discussion and action. I just want to confirm with Mr. Collins that we're okay if it's meant to be that we have action on this item.
Yes, it was just LSCN 001 and TCD 004.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this one we will vote on if we, yeah.
So several years ago, the General Assembly passed an adjunct instructor provision. There had been a CTE adjunct instructor provision in the statute, and they kind of mirrored that for educators. We were a little slow in kind of getting that into policy, but we wanted to make sure that it was there. And so what this does, so what we've left the career and technical educators section kind of intact and moved on to the adjunct instructors and core academic subjects. So this covers core academic subjects, fine and performing arts, and foreign languages.
Which is tired tonight, so she had field day.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
Which is pretty much everything. So now it does, the educational requirements are worthy of taking note. So if someone is a faculty member at an institution of higher education, they can be contracted by an LEA, teach as an adjunct instructor in grades K through 12. If the faculty member meets the educator requirements to instruct as a faculty member at the employing IHE. So in other words, you qualify to be a math professor at Elon College, you can go to Alamance Burlington school system and be hired as an adjunct and teach K through 12 math. But we make it very clear that adjunct instructors may not be contracted for exceptional children areas unless they are licensed by the State Board of Education. So that starts to move into federal law. And so we wanted to make that very clear to folks that you can't adjunct as an EC provider unless you are licensed by the board. And you have to be approved by the IHE to teach those subjects, just reiterating that. Now, the law goes on to say that anyone who attends an IHE or EPP and has completed at least one semester, and that's defined as 9 semester hours, they're eligible to contract as an adjunct instructor with an LEA to teach high school courses. And so we stipulate that one semester means 9 credit hours in the subject. Adjunct instructors these folks cannot do EC either unless they're licensed by the State Board of Education. And they have to, the contract has to align with subject area in which they have earned at least 24 semester hours of relevant content. So if they've got a bachelor's degree, and they're, if they're getting a graduate degree with you, they've got to have the relevant coursework in order to teach those courses. But these folks are not required to be licensed by the state board as long as they meet the employment and the contracting requirements. But they, they're not required to hold the license in those cases. Now, we do go into the contracting requirements with adjunct for both CTE and core areas. They may not be employed. They may be employed for less than 20 hours per week for an entire school year, or you could contract on a full-time basis, but less than 6 months in an LEA. And for some reason, the law states that that's only 5 months for CTE. So we've put that in here. So they don't earn paid leave. They're not paid on the teacher salary scale. They don't qualify for healthcare benefits or retirement benefits. And those contracts are at the negotiation or the discretion of the local agencies. So they don't have to pay them the same rate as a fully certified teacher on the state salary scale. They have flexibility in how they negotiate those contracts. They have to be properly vetted to make sure there's nothing on their record that would preclude them from teaching in a school. So they have to do background checks on these folks like they do other folks. And if the adjunct instructor is not a licensed teacher, there are 4 areas that the district is required to do pre-service training in order for them to qualify for the position, and those are listed there. So we haven't had a lot of LEAs ask us about this, but again, it's an opportunity to staff that hopefully they can take advantage of, maybe to fill some vacancies if they need to. But this policy pretty much comports with the law as it's written, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions on this or clarification needed? Could I have a motion for the approval of policy amendments to EVAL 023?
So moved, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Second, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Any further discussion? Dr. Evans, could you call the roll for?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming, Ms. Patton,
Approved.
Dr. Locklear,
Approve.
Ms. Smith,
Approve.
Ms. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington, Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Mr. Smith, Dr. Graham,
Approve.
Ms. Jenkins,
Approve.
and Dr. Winter.
Approve.
I believe that is a unanimous approval of this motion.
That is.
Thank you. All right, that's the end of our business. I do want to say that, Bill and I have discussed that we would like to try to meet at least one time a semester in person for the people that can come. And I just wanted to open up to the floor and make sure, see if anyone had any issues. We'll be in touch to see when that might, we're thinking maybe October or maybe November, but we'll be in touch via email to see if that, which date might work best for all of us. But I just wanted to open up the floor to see if anybody had any opposition of us trying to do that or any comments related to that. Okay, we'll be in touch. Thank you. So thank you, commission members, advisors, and staff for your preparation for the discussions today. Our next meeting will be is scheduled for October 10th. We have now completed our meeting, and unless there is additional business at this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Connie.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. I don't think we need to call the roll to adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone have a great evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for joining us and providing input today, and Ms. Schaefer, and of course, the DPI staff that has done a lot of work to prepare for this meeting. We appreciate your collaboration and partnership for the Pepsi Commission. So have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.